welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We have got an absolutely packed program for you today. In just a little bit, our El Paso correspondent, Julian Rezendes, is going to be joining us to talk about something that's happened a couple times now in the recent past in different detention centers, and that is the death of detainees at these ICE detention facilities. So we're going to talk about that a little later in the program. But of course, we're going to start today by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with the protests in Minneapolis continue to grow as anger over the shooting death of Renee Good grows, and now they're leading to a federal lawsuit. Confrontations between federal agents and protesters stretched throughout the day and across multiple cities on Monday. Agents fired tear gas in Minneapolis as a crowd around immigration officers questioned a man, while to the northwest in St. Cloud, hundreds of people protested outside a strip of Somali-run businesses after ICE officers arrived. Later that night, confrontations erupted between protesters and officers guarding the federal building being used as a base for the Twin Cities crackdown. The Department of Homeland Security says it has made more than 2,000 arrests in Minnesota just since last month. The crackdown began with over 2,000 officers to Minnesota, and now DHS says it will add more agents to that operation.
There'll be hundreds more, and in order to allow our ICE and our Border Patrol individuals that are working in Minneapolis to do so safely.
It didn't look like de-escalation, but are you trying to send a message?
The agitators and the rioters here in Minneapolis need to understand that our operations will continue unabated despite the violence they perpetrate against law enforcement.
Now, Minnesota and the Twin Cities are suing the federal government to stop the surge by federal immigration authorities. The lawsuit was filed Monday, and it is seeking a temporary restraining order against the operation. The lawsuit says the operation violates federal law by being arbitrary, as similar actions aren't happening in other states. The Trump administration says the surge targets fraud. News Nation's Brooke Schaefer has the details on the lawsuit.
We're here to announce a lawsuit we're filing against the United States Department of Homeland Security to end the unlawful, unprecedented surge of the federal law enforcement agents into Minnesota, because this has to stop.
State and local officials really echoing the message of these protesters who have been outside this federal building in Minneapolis for days on end. State leaders calling this an unprecedented surge of federal officers to the state of Minnesota. Tonight, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem responding to the lawsuit, saying in part, for years, these corrupt activist politicians have refused to protect Minnesotans and are now proposing illegal actions to keep their stranglehold on control and continue stealing from American citizens.
What we are seeing is thousands, plural, thousands of federal agents coming into our city.
But the Minneapolis mayor pointed to some of the videos we have seen from this weekend and said what we are seeing right now is not normal immigration enforcement. DHS told us since their increased enforcement, they've arrested roughly 2,000 people believed to be in Minnesota and the U.S. illegally.
It's not just the tactics that are being used. It's the attack on the American people who are citizens. I wasn't born here. I'm carrying my ID with me. I'm carrying my passport card and my ID with me all the time because I don't know when I'm going to be detained, when I'm going to be approached.
What we are seeing right now is not normal immigration enforcement. We are not asking ICE not to do ICE things. We are asking this federal government to stop the unconstitutional conduct that is invading our streets each and every day.
But there is growing frustration, including from this man, a U.S. citizen who our crew met today in Minneapolis. He says ICE agents chased him and rammed his car, asking for ID.
I was like, leave me alone. I'm a citizen. What the heck is the problem?
The Trump administration says they are in Minnesota in part because of allegations of years-long rampant fraud in this state. Today, state and local leaders pushed back on that, saying this isn't about fraud, this is political. In Minneapolis, Brooke Schaefer, News Nation.
He is now facing
The FBI says it has found no surveillance or other video of a Border Patrol agent shooting and wounding 2 people in a pickup truck during an immigration enforcement operation in Portland, Oregon last week. Agents told investigators that one of their colleagues opened fire Thursday after the driver allegedly put the truck in reverse and slammed into an unoccupied car the agents had rented. The driver made a federal court appearance on Monday on charges of aggravated assault of an officer and damaging federal property. Joey Vaca has the details.
He's now facing charges including aggravated assault of a federal officer with a deadly weapon. Court documents painting a clearer picture of what led up to the shooting Thursday. According to the docs, Nino Moncada is a known Tren de Aragua associate. A judge in Denver already ordered his removal in 2024. The documents say Border Patrol was performing a targeted enforcement operation and found Nino Moncada driving a red pickup near the Adventist Health in southeast Portland. Then Border Patrol did a traffic stop on the truck in that Adventist parking lot with 4 unmarked cars. Agents got out and approached the truck, identifying themselves as law enforcement. According to the court docs, it was then an anxious Nino Moncada put the truck in reverse, ramming into an empty Border Patrol car before putting the truck in drive and reversing into the Border Patrol car again, doing this forward then reverse action multiple times. The documents say a Border Patrol agent described being scared Nino Moncada could hit them and other agents with the truck, and an agent opened fire. Nino Moncada then drove off, agents on scene not knowing whether they'd hit him. Now we know that's when he went to the apartment complex on Northeast 146th and Burnside, where he called 911 for help and Portland police responded. Court documents say Nino Moncada repeatedly said F ICE as police on scene placed a tourniquet on him. Nino Moncada got medical attention before speaking with FBI special agents. According to the documents, he told the agents he rammed the Border Patrol cars on purpose.
That was Joey Vaca reporting. None of the 6 agents involved was recording on their body camera, and there is no body camera footage. The passenger of the truck was hospitalized after being shot in the chest and being held at a private immigration detention facility in Tacoma, Washington. She faces a charge of illegal entry into the U.S., which federal prosecutors in Texas filed last week. And she's also accused of being involved in a prostitution ring run by the gang. And that's a look at what's trending across the border, but make sure to stay with us because when we come back, we're going to be taking a look with our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, about some recent deaths happening in ICE detention facilities located all across the border between Texas, the United States, and Mexico. So stay with us. Border Report Live will be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Midelas here in Harlingen, Texas. So a migrant earlier this week who was found in distress along the border on Christmas Day died at a hospital the following day. Now, we just got this information from the DHS earlier this week. Now, U.S. Border Patrol agents from the Del Rio sector say they found the Mexican man sitting on a chair near the Rio Grande west of Del Rio. You can see there on your screen, that's right up the border from us down here at the very bottom southern tip of Texas and kind of in between Brownsville, Texas, and El Paso, where our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz will be joining us from in just a moment. But a news release from U.S. Customs and Border Protection said the agents said the man told them that he was having trouble breathing and had pain in his chest and left arm. He died the next day at a San Antonio hospital. And that brings me to at least 2 migrants who have died at the ICE detention center camp East Montana at Fort Bliss in El Paso. For months, activists have complained about the treatment of migrants being held at that facility in far west Texas. And our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz joins us live now with the details on the latest death and the issue at hand. Hey, Julian.
Really good to be back. Yeah, I can tell you very briefly that within the last 24 hours, we have learned of a second migrant death of a person who was detained at Camp East Montana, just outside El Paso in the greater El Paso area. This migrant, who is being identified as Gerardo Lunas Campos, 55, originally from Cuba, started experiencing distress. Prior to that, just a few moments, he had been in line to get his medication. There was an incident. The federal government says that he became disruptive, and he was placed in segregation. So within hours of this happening, EMS had to be called to the facility after local staff at the center couldn't help him, and he was pronounced dead by EMS. And like you said, this is the second death of a migrant detained at Camp East Montana. The other one happened a month ago on December 3rd, and that involved a Guatemalan migrant, a 48-year-old Francisco Gaspar Andres. He has a medical history of alcohol withdrawal, and apparently he experienced a medical emergency, was sent to a hospital in El Paso, and he later died there. So this second death has renewed calls from activists in particular, not just to improve services or have more accountability at the ICE detention center, but just to shut it down. They are not in agreement with this center, which around now houses about 2,000 detainees from all over the country. The latest fatality, he had been detained in Florida, transferred to El Paso or to Fort Bliss. And the other one was detained in Rochester, New York, and also transferred here to the greater El Paso area to this East Montana Detention Center. So there's still a lot of tension. There's still a lot of calls for accountability. People are demanding to know what exactly is going on. And one of the details about this facility, Camp East Montana, is that it was never meant to be a permanent facility. It doesn't have concrete walls. It's pretty much made out of canvas. It's a bunch of large tents with security and supervision, heating, cooling, and all that. But there's still a lot of community frustration about the center, and more frustration about what's going on with fatalities.
Now, Julian, one of the things that we've been hearing from folks is, for example, let's say someone is diabetic going into these facilities. We're hearing from family members that they're concerned, A, that they're not getting medications, and B, that they might not be getting their appropriate dietary needs to make sure that they don't have an insulin spike, things like that. Are we hearing the same things about that Fort Bliss Center?
Rudy, what you have mentioned is true. For the past 5 or so years, I have been, hearing these concerns about lack of adequate medication, lack of perception of lack of appropriate, timely medical care, and it has all been documented in lawsuits. Now, I can tell you that, as far as I know, these lawsuits have not resulted in any center shutting down or any major changes. And a lot of these detention centers, they're being run by contractors for ICE, and the complaints primarily center on those contractors. Here in El Paso, I still have yet to hear of a lawsuit, but certainly that's a concern. Are people with a medical condition getting their medical treatment, their medication? And how do I know? Are you allowing me, a nonprofit, or are you allowing me, a local congressperson, to go in and verify for myself? So that has always been a point of contention here at this center, which I may add barely opened on August 1st. So it's been open for less than 6 months, and we already have 2 fatalities of detainees associated with this detention center.
You know, you mentioned the kind of the facility. It's almost like a makeshift facility, a giant canvas tent. It does have heating and cooling and the necessary plumbing and things like that. But and I'm going to pull this video up here again. You're seeing these protesters outside the facility talking about failure to provide medical care, no mental health screenings, lack of info. But some of the ones we're seeing, like for that one right there, inhumane conditions in dirty living quarters, water entry into cells. Are we hearing that about this Fort Bliss detention facility?
Certainly the activists who are doing the protest are hearing this either from relatives or attorneys of the detainees. But like I said, access to the facility is very difficult, very restricted. Those are pretty much federal government guidelines. But those who have got in, including the local congresswoman here in El Paso, have voiced numerous complaints about the conditions, about especially the environment there for the detainees. You saw some of the signs about the detainees saying they're not getting calls and all that. Like I said, there's a lot of community frustration, and above all, there's a call for accountability so that people can go in and inspect the center and see for themselves if what they're hearing, what they're hearing from third parties, they're also hearing from the detainees themselves.
You mentioned some of these lawsuits that we've seen over the last half a decade, at not just ICE detention facilities here in South Texas and along the border, but in some of the other facilities across the country. Have you heard from any immigration attorneys or any civil rights attorneys talking about maybe bringing suit to this facility that, as you mentioned, is just very brand new and still in its makeshift phase?
That is certainly a possibility. In fact, I've checked the court records, but it might be just a matter of time. But what they are asking for immediately is a shutdown of the facility. I think, Rudy, if we can show the facility to the public, they can see the nature of the non-permanent nature of this facility. Those are canvas tents. Over there, you can see some machines that were still doing some work because the center is still undergoing expansion. Eventually, the Trump administration wants it to house up to 5,000 migrants. And I also got to tell you that the purpose of this facility is to be sort of like a holding tank, so to speak, for people who are in the process of deportation. I can tell you that these two migrants who died in the center were in the process of deportation already.
You mentioned that the Trump administration eventually wants to house, you said 5,000 migrants in here that are in the process of deportation. Do we know about how many folks are in there right now?
The last I heard, there were around 2,000 detainees. I have reached out to ICE. I did so a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, more or less. And I asked for information, including confirmation that there's a new ICE director here in El Paso. We used to have a long-time ICE director who had reached out to the community in some cases. I am yet to hear this confirmation of the new ICE director here in El Paso, who would be, in charge of entire ICE operations in the region. And I do understand that he is a male who comes from the U.S. Border Patrol.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we've seen over the last year several changes in both Border Patrol and ICE leadership in different areas of responsibility along here in the border. I know last August, for example, RGV Border Sector Chief Gloria Chavez was very unceremoniously asked to leave, and she resigned from her position. And just in the last 2 weeks, we've learned of the person who will replace her here in the Rio Grande Valley. Is there any thought that the administration is kind of replacing folks that they think may be more suited to better enforce their policies?
Rudy, I think we reported a couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago, that there was a supposed list of 12 individuals, 12 ICE directors who were in line to get replaced. This would be professionals who were holdovers from the Biden administration, such as the one here in El Paso. I understand that since that memo kind of leaked, there have been a lot of changes in those places.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Julian. We appreciate you joining us today. We've been speaking with our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, about those 2 deaths that happened at the Fort Bliss Detention Center in the now first 6 months that it's been open. We appreciate you joining us today, Julian.
Likewise.
All right. Well, stay with us. We'll be back with more headlines in just 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas. In Colorado Springs, students at a high school held a walkout to protest against ICE operations. It's the same school that Renee Good, the woman killed last week by an ICE agent, attended as a student. Carolyn Felling has their story.
Students walking out of class in Colorado Springs to join nationwide protests against ICE.
We need to learn to advocate and speak up for ourselves and the people around us and stick together and work together instead of being overrun by disrespect and terrible things happening to people all around the world.
Hundreds of students from Coronado High School spent Monday afternoon waving signs, chanting, and honking horns.
We're basically missing good hours of school to do what adults should be doing themselves.
We want justice for Renee!
Renee Good was shot and killed during an encounter with an ICE agent last week after she allegedly swerved her car toward him. Since then, protests have popped up across America, including here in Colorado.
I was crying. I was really upset. I had to talk to my friends and family to calm me down because it's just absurd that we live in a community where this stuff is possible.
Students say the shooting hits close to home because Good is a former Cougar who walked down the same halls and cheered for the same team as them.
It was one of the worst things to know that the heaviness and everything.
District 11 confirms a Renee Nicole Ganger graduated from Coronado in 2006. In court documents from October 2023 show Renee Nicole Ganger was her legal name at one point. D11 also says it did not organize or sanction the walkout.
They said that until the buses show up, we're not going to be allowed back on campus for this. Which honestly is pretty common. We're usually not allowed to walk off campus and come back on.
Students say their message is clear.
Speak up for what you believe in, even if it's scary or uncomfortable or if it's going to cause a small issue somewhere, because this is the world you're going to be living in. You might as well change it and make it a world that you want to live in.
That was Carolyn Felling reporting. Going back to what Julian and I were just talking about in reference to members of Congress visiting those ICE detention facilities. In Minnesota, 3 Democratic members of Congress were blocked from visiting an ICE detention facility in that state over the weekend. Their lawyers asked a federal judge in Washington, D.C. for an emergency hearing. They say the Trump administration secretly reimposed a policy limiting Congress members' access to immigration detention facilities a day after Renee Good's fatal shooting by an ICE officer in Minneapolis. Last month, the judge temporarily blocked ICE from enforcing policies limiting Congress members' access to immigration detention facilities. Lawmakers in New York are split over how to deal with federal law enforcement agents against migrants. Senate Republicans want to pass a bill that would require cooperation between ICE and local police, but as Sarah Mankiewicz reports from Albany, Democratic lawmakers want to prevent state and local agencies from working with federal immigration agents.
Act took their message to Albany today, calling for changes they say would help protect immigrant families. I spoke with a legal expert who breaks down the potential hurdles this bill could face. Those in favor of the New York for All Act say ICE raids and what they call scare tactics have torn families apart, and that federal agents have relied on state and local resources to make arrests, detain people, and carry out deportations. If passed, the bill would bar state and local agencies, including law enforcement, from cooperating with ICE, sharing sensitive information, or using personnel and resources to support federal immigration enforcement. Legal expert Barry Covert says the proposal still raises important questions, including how the law would be enforced.
I'm not sure that it would be upheld as constitutional because it seems to prohibit speech between New York state agencies and individuals regarding the immigration status, which seems to be a very blurred line between whether that's permitted or whether you can somehow prohibit New York state agencies from inquiring as to immigration status and cooperating with federal authorities.
The New York for All Act has received support from State Senator April Baskin and Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan when he co-sponsored the bill during his time in the state Senate. Before the bill passes, it must first go through the committee, a step that could shape how and if the bill moves forward. For now, reporting in downtown Buffalo, Sarah Mankiewicz, News 4.
And before we leave you for this afternoon, we want to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. Political Power Ranker is a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nexstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. And this week's episode is a good one. It focuses on the elections, the gubernatorial election and the Senate race in in the state of Illinois, breaking down who's up and who's down as they do every week. In this week's episode, or the coming episode, we're just going to focus on everything happening right here in Texas, which, as you know, has a lot to do with what happens along the border. So make sure to check it out. You can find more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com or your local Nexstar station's website. And don't forget that you can stay informed on the stories shaping the U.S.-Mexico border on your commute home, while you're out walking the dog, or maybe you're at the gym. Border Report Live brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form every single day. You can listen now on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and the YouTube app. That's going to do it for us today. For Julian in El Paso, my name is Rudy Mideles in Harlingen. We'll see you next time.